05:12 a.m., June 7th, 42 nautical miles off Baja California. On the radar screen of a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon, a faint trace appeared, thin as a scratch on the ocean. Local fishing boats crawled at 12 knots, but this shadow was pushing nearly 20. Beneath the dark waves, a 50-foot fiberglass hull carried $200 million worth of cocaine, exposing only a fragile snorkel above the surface. Inside, 4 cartel crewmen held their breath, convinced the night would hide them. But high above, at 25,000 feet, the Poseidon's radar swept the sea like an all-seeing eye. Each ping echoed like a ticking clock. 90 seconds to decide, a whale, or the ghost of a cartel. What they did not know was that eyes in the sky had been watching for hours. 05:12 a.m., 42 nautical miles off Baja California. On the radar screen, a faint smear drifts across, almost too small to notice. Out on the open water, the ocean looks empty. But just beneath the swell, a fiberglass hull creeps forward, painted in jagged greens and slate gray that swallow the dawn's light. Under favorable conditions, this semi-submersible rides no more than 30 centimeters above the chop. Its wake dissolves almost instantly, leaving nothing but a trembling snorkel gasping for air. Each cough of the diesel engine echoes like a nervous heartbeat. Inside the cramped cylinder, 4 men sit shoulder to shoulder, knees pressed to steel. Sweat clings to the air, thick and metallic. Beneath their boots, bundles of white powder lie stacked like a hidden fortune. Worth reports suggest close to $200 million if it reaches shore. The helmsman keeps the compass needle steady. In his head, the same mantra repeats, cross the line, get paid, disappear. The hull ticks, batteries quiver, oxygen slides lower than anyone dares to admit. The Pacific presses in like a slow, closing fist. 30 centimeters of freeboard feels like a cruel joke when every swell towers like a wall. They plan to vanish into the traffic of fishing boats, crawling at 12 knots. But their own shadow pushes nearly 20. In 90 seconds, a choice beyond their control will decide everything. For now, the sea holds its silence, and the ghost keeps moving. At 25,000 feet above the Pacific, a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon cut a steady arc across the morning sky. The aircraft, a converted Boeing 737, carried more than wings. It carried the reputation of being the all-seeing eye of the ocean. Inside the mission cabin, radar screens glowed green. The AN/APY-10 swept the surface below, painting the sea in pulses of light. Under favorable conditions, reports indicate it can distinguish the clutter of waves from the solid shadow of a hull no larger than a truck. Alongside, electro-optical cameras waited like patient hawks, ready to magnify any glint on the water's skin. A faint return flickered, then steadied. The operator leaned closer, heartbeat quickening. Could be just a fishing boat, he muttered, or something else. Around him, the crew held their breath. A countdown clock marked 90 seconds until the next satellite pass, when confirmation would be possible, or lost. Poseidon itself seemed to sense the tension. The fuselage hummed with power, sensors reaching down like invisible claws. In the narrator's mind, it was less a machine and more a hunter sniffing for prey, tasting the metallic scent of diesel on the wind. Every ping from the radar was another tick of destiny. If the trace dissolved, the ocean would swallow its secret. But if it held, if the ghost in the water was real, then a billion-dollar aircraft had just found a $200 million gamble creeping toward American shores. The sub drifts in silence. The captain has cut the diesel, letting the vessel float like discarded trash on the tide. Without the steady rumble of engines, the Pacific sounds different. Just the groan of fiberglass and the slap of water against the hull. Inside, the air is heavy. Diesel fumes cling to every surface, stinging the lungs. Oxygen gauges tick downward, the needle sliding closer to the red zone. Reports indicate that in such semi-submersibles, the crew often fights more against suffocation than detection. 4 men share the same stale breath, their shirts soaked through with sweat. In the darkness, each mind splits between 2 poles, the dread of capture and the lure of fortune. $200 million waits on shore, a prize that could buy freedom or bury them in prison cells. Every minute of silence feels like gambling with their lives. The helmsman listens to the hollow echo of his heartbeat, imagining sonar pings bouncing through the water. To him, the narco-sub feels less like a machine and more like a wounded animal, lungs locked, muscles tight, praying the predator will pass. A watch is checked. 90 seconds slide away into the void. The ocean presses closer, claustrophobic and relentless. Above them, unseen eyes might already be fixed. Below them, only steel and fear. The gamble is simple. Stay hidden and suffocate, or surface and be caught. The order goes out, and the Poseidon opens its belly. Sonobuoys tumble into the Pacific one after another, splashing down in a tight triangular grid. Each buoy deploys fins and antennas, drifting like silent sentries across the waves. The DFAR units begin listening. Under favorable conditions, they can capture faint vibrations, the rhythmic churn of a propeller, the cough of a diesel engine. For long seconds, the displays show only static. Then, a pulse. A metallic throb, faint but steady, beats across the operator's headset. The Combat Information Center freezes. Nobody speaks. Green lines dance across the spectrum analyzer, rising and falling with each mechanical heartbeat. The crew exchange glances, eyes wide, waiting for confirmation. Above the display, a digital clock blinks. 90 seconds until the next cycle, 90 seconds before the ocean swallows the sound again. The pilot breaks the silence. His voice is low, taut like a wire. If we miss this, it's gone forever. His words hang heavy in the air, heavier than the altitude. The Poseidon circles, sensors straining. Every ping is another tick on the clock. The Pacific seems endless, yet the sound is here, locked inside the triangle of buoys. It is weak, fragile, like a heartbeat slipping away. But it is there, and that is enough to turn suspicion into pursuit. The line on the spectrum analyzer flattened. The metallic heartbeat that moments ago throbbed through the headphones faded into nothing. One by one, the green traces collapsed back into static. Inside the Poseidon, silence pressed down. Operators stared at blank screens, waiting for another pulse, another echo. Nothing came. The ocean seemed to have swallowed the sound whole. The pilot leaned closer, searching the horizon through a haze of clouds. His voice cracked the tension, measured but uncertain. Could be a whale, could be a trawler. Hard to say. The words carried a lifeline. Maybe this was all just noise. Around him, shoulders loosened. A few men exhaled, the air hissing from lungs that had been held too long. Pressure bled away, if only for a moment. Suspicion thinned, replaced by doubt. Perhaps the elusive shadow had never been there at all. But the clock on the bulkhead kept flashing, a digital reminder that time was still running. 80 seconds. 79. The countdown did not stop, even if the trace had vanished. The Pacific was vast, indifferent, and full of ghosts that came and went without warning. For the first time, it seemed the cartel's gamble might have worked. Hidden in the silence, carried by the waves, the narco-sub looked as though it had slipped free. To the crew above, the ocean was empty again. To the audience, the story tilted toward disappointment. The hunter had blinked, and the prey was gone. Beneath the surface, the narco-sub had held its breath as long as it could. The diesel was cut, batteries draining, oxygen gauges creeping into the red. Reports indicate that such vessels must surface periodically to replenish air. Tonight, the crew had no choice. The snorkel broke the surface like the gasp of a drowning man. A faint shimmer reflected the first light of dawn, invisible to the naked eye but bright as a flare in the Poseidon's infrared camera. On the mission screen, a thin spike lit up, unmistakable. At that exact moment, the sonar buoys sang again. This time, the echo was stronger, clearer, no longer a ghost, but a heartbeat pounding in stereo. The spectrum analyzer spiked, green lines dancing upward. In the cabin, adrenaline surged. The crew straightened in their seats, the silence shattered by the confirmation they had been waiting for. The pilot clenched his jaw, whispering to no one in particular. There it is. He surfaced. The Poseidon banked in a wide arc, sensors converging. The aircraft felt alive, its radar and cameras like eyes narrowing on prey, its sonar like ears catching a final breath. The snorkel glowed bright, a tiny candle flickering on the vast ocean. The hunter had blinked, but the prey had blinked louder. In hiding, the cartel had exposed itself. The ocean no longer held silence. It held a target. And once seen, there was no going back. The narco-sub roared back to life. Diesel engines coughed, then steadied into a low growl. Bubbles streamed to the surface as the vessel surged forward, clawing through the Pacific at 8 knots, its maximum under load. Inside the cramped hull, fear mixed with defiance. The helmsman fixed his eyes on the compass, whispering the same desperate prayer. If we reach the shipping lanes, they will not risk a shot. If we reach the port, we are safe. Each mile closer to land felt like a lifeline. Each minute, a gamble against fate. Above them, the Poseidon shadowed every move. The aircraft banked low, dropping another string of sonobuoys into the sea. They fell like a steel net, listening, triangulating. On the mission display, a digital overlay marked the chase. 5 nautical miles. 4. 3. In the Combat Information Center, no one moved. The green trace pulsed, stubborn and steady. The countdown screamed louder than the engines. 90 seconds until intercept range. The sub's crew believed the coast would shield them, that civilian waters meant protection. But the ocean betrayed their urgency. Every extra knot churned a trail brighter, noisier, easier to track. The Pacific narrowed around them, waves rising like walls. 5 nautical miles was nothing, a stretch of blue that could be crossed in minutes. Yet every second closed the trap. The cartel thought they were racing toward safety. In truth, they were sprinting into the jaws of a hunter. The Poseidon's transmission cut through the static, coordinates relayed, target confirmed. Within minutes, the response was already in motion. From the north, U.S. Coast Guard cutters surged at 25 knots, their wakes slicing the Pacific like blades. From the south, Mexican Navy patrol craft closed the gap, fast and relentless. On board the narco-sub, the crew believed the shoreline meant salvation. Through the periscope slit, the lights of fishing villages flickered faint on the horizon. Safety seemed close enough to touch. One whispered, "Once we blend with the boats, they cannot touch us." But the sea was already closing in. High-speed RHIBs launched from the cutters, bouncing across the swells, their engines screaming. Helicopter rotors thumped overhead, spotlight beams slashing the dark water. The trap tightened with each second, a steel net woven across miles of ocean. The Poseidon circled above, its radar tracing every move. To the aircraft, the sub was no longer a ghost, but a prisoner in an invisible cage. Sensors marked its position with precision, passing updates down to every vessel racing to intercept. The narco-sub tried one last maneuver, veering east, engines straining. But every turn revealed another predator. Patrol craft ahead, RHIBs on the flanks, cutters looming like giants. In the Combat Information Center, the digital clock blinked down the final seconds. The pilot's voice was calm now, almost cold. It's over. What the cartel thought was escape had become entrapment. The closer they reached for safety, the tighter the jaws closed. The Pacific offered no refuge, only a perfect kill box. The hunter's patience had paid off, and the prey had run straight into the net. The chase ended, not with an explosion, but with silence. At 05:24 a.m., 12 minutes after first contact, the narco-sub broke the surface. Fiberglass groaned, foam spilled off the hull, and the snorkel rose like a white flag against the dawn. Around it, the ocean erupted with steel. U.S. Coast Guard cutters carved white arcs through the waves. Mexican patrol craft flanked the horizon. RHIBs circled close, their wakes slicing patterns around the cornered vessel. Overhead, the Poseidon banked lazily, its shadow stretching across the sea like the signature on a verdict already written. The crew had no fight left. A hatch clanged open. 4 men emerged one by one, their faces pale in the morning light, arms lifted high, hands trembling. From above, they looked like ants spilling out of a cracked shell. On the mission log, the words came quick and sharp. Target surfaced. Crew surrendered. Package secured. A cartel gamble worth $200 million had ended in less than 12 minutes. The Pacific, vast and merciless, had kept its receipt. To the operators, it was proof that patience and technology win battles as surely as weapons. The radar that caught a shimmer, the sonar that heard a heartbeat, the eyes in the sky that never blinked. All had played their part. For the men inside the sub, it was over. For the hunters, it was victory. And for the audience, it was a reminder. Even ghosts cannot hide forever. The ocean fell quiet again. The cutters slowed, RHIBs circled at idle, and the Poseidon climbed back into its steady orbit above the Pacific. What had begun as a faint scratch on radar ended with men on their knees, a fortune seized, and a legend erased. The narco-sub was small, fragile, almost invisible. But even the smallest ghost leaves a trace. A shimmer on infrared, a throb on sonar, a ripple too sharp for the sea to hide. The ocean is vast, but technology is patient, and patience is merciless. To the crew aboard the Poseidon, it was a victory written not in gunfire, but in signals. Radar beams, sonar pings, infrared flashes. Tools of perception turned into weapons of inevitability. They called the aircraft a hunter, and today, it hunted perfectly. The cartel's gamble ended in silence. 12 minutes, $200 million, and a dream of invisibility crushed by persistence from the sky. The Pacific had swallowed many secrets, but not this one. For those watching, the message was clear. The battlefield of the future is not defined by cannons or missiles, but by who sees first and who never blinks. And so the punchline, in the Pacific's endless blue, even the smallest ghost leaves a trace. And once Poseidon sees it, there is no escape. If this story pulled you in, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe to P-8, where every scenario stretches beyond imagination and lingers long after the screen fades. The closing words carried a reminder. This is storytelling, not a playbook. No real commander, sailor, or soldier should gamble with lives in reckless games of intimidation. The purpose is to illustrate, to dramatize, to warn, not to instruct. Any resemblance to classified missions or specific individuals is purely coincidental. Our intent is never to mislead or glorify war, but to spark curiosity, reflection, and a deeper appreciation for how fragile modern conflict can be. Thank you for being here. Your presence is what gives these stories meaning.